As a new scrapbooker, you may be feeling overwhelmed on how to get started. One simple way to make it less of a hassle is by using scrapbook kits. Many companies make these. Scrapbook kits won't generally come with your tools, like your cutting tools or your cutting mats, but they usually will come with pattern paper, cardstock, and embellishments you need to create the layout. What makes scrapbook kits great is it helps you become familiar with the tools you'll be using as you keep scrapbooking, and helps you become familiar with the different styles and the brands you want to use. And some crafters even just scrapbook with the kits. They enjoy them so much their album is filled with these. Anyway, in today's video, I am going to demonstrate how to put together one of our kits. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, this page kit is called Picking Up Pine Cones, and this is one from our brand, Mosaic Moments. As you can see here, it has a label, and that label is basically a picture of how the layout should look. And so you'll be able to know where to place each element, so you don't have to worry, at least with our page kits, you don't have to worry about where everything needs to be placed. It's all decided for you. If you need, there are directions on the back of the packaging in case you need to have a refresher on how to put this together. So I'm going ahead and opening up the kit, and everything on the label you will have in the page kit. Obviously, the main thing with this one is you will need to add your photos, and I'll talk about that later. This is the grid paper. This is the background paper we sell, so every page we make is placed on the grid paper. I will be talking about that more in another video, but for today, all you mainly need to know is the grid paper is going to help you align all these pieces so everything will stay neat and straight. So that is the benefit of our kits. And then you can look through and make sure you have all the pieces here that are shown on the label. Now, it can be sort of hard to tell where to place each element when you're new. What I like to do is look at the shape in the top left corner so I can tell it's this shape here. And from here, I can easily navigate where to place each piece. So that's what I recommend, is starting with the top left corner. So I'm going to go ahead and glue down this particular piece. And this is one of the tools I mentioned in the last video. This is repositionable glue. This glue is from Hermandado. And again, this is not permanent, although if you had permanent, it probably would be fine to use with this kit because you're pretty sure of where you're going to place each piece. But I do recommend repositionable as a beginner when you're not as confident yet about getting things glued in the right place. So this is one mistake, is some people just plop it down. Some people just plop it down like I did here, but what can happen is your piece will look crooked and it might be a little bit obvious when you get the other pieces on. So I like to do the slide and guide method where you slide it into the grid and your very top and left lines should be completely covered. So you know you've done it right if you cannot see the lines underneath it. It should barely be covering them. And I'm going to show this again. I decided to go with the piece on the far right here. And again, I'm making sure all those lines are completely covered, so that way you don't see them on your final design. And now it's easy to see where the next piece is going to go. So I need to pick the longest piece from this particular color as shown on the label. And when I add the glue, I just put some in the corners and a little bit in the middle. And that it should be enough, although some glue brands you may need to add more than that. The Hermandado is a pretty good brand, but some brands maybe you feel like you need to add more than just a little bit in the corners. Of course, the next piece I have is these big square. That one was pretty easy to figure out. And now I'm going to put down another tan piece here. So I'm gluing it as usual. And then I know I have that pattern paper there, so I know the next line down, this one needs to go. So I hope you can see here, you use the grid to be able to see where to place everything. And again, it keeps everything neat and straight. And basically, you just want to cover the lines of where you're going to place those particular pieces. And yes, your page is going to have little 1/8 inch gaps between each little design spot, which is how our system works. What I like about that is you can see a bit more of the background, and again, it kind of gives your page a more organized feel, and it gives your mats and paper some breathing room. All right, I have this last little strip here, and this page is already finished. And now I can start on the second side. So I'm going to follow the same instructions as the previous layout. I'm starting with this top left corner first. Although on this page, the mats are a lot larger, so it's a little bit easier to figure out where everything needs to go. And then the paper strips are really long, so it's pretty easy to put these together. And I'm going to be showing in a moment how to add your photos so that way the mats look even around them. But here is the completed layout so far. So now all my paper mats and pattern paper are glued down, and so now I'm going to plan out my photos. The first one I like to pick is the focal point photo. In this case, there's this very long vertical space, and what's nice about it is I won't have to trim down this photo. I did pick this one because she's a little bit closer up, and I don't have to worry about cropping that photo. So I definitely want to make sure that the photos that are cropped a bit farther away are probably going to go in the smaller design spots, and then anything that can't really be cropped down will go into the other ones. So just take your time. I will have a link to an article in case you want to see more ideas on how to fill these spaces, because sometimes you don't, most of your photos may fill the spaces and you may have a space that cannot be filled. And so we have some solutions for you, such as making it a journaling spot and some other ideas if you want to look into that. So go check out that article after you're done with this video. For today, it's mainly a demonstration on how you can plan out your photos. Plus, I'm going to be showing you how to cut them so you get an idea of how these page kits work. All right. I pretty much take my fingers and make sure the subject's going to fit within that space, and keep in mind that they are going to crop a little bit smaller than the mat itself. So I have some of the tools here I mentioned in the previous video. I have a cutting mat, and this cutting mat is from our brand Mosaic Moments. I also have the metal ruler with the corked back, plus an X-Acto knife and the repositionable glue. Again, this is really important to use the repositionable glue for this case of cutting photos, by the way, because it's easier to transfer your photos from the cutting mat to your scrapbook page. So I'm going to show you that now. All right, I have my first photo here, and I'm going to be showing a few different cuts. So if you don't understand everything the first time, I'm going to be showing this 2 more times. But first, I'm going to add my glue. I'm going to make sure I use repositionable glue, so that way I can move it from the mat to the scrapbook page. And I have some glue here and there. You may want to add some more if you need. And basically, I'm going to line it up on my cutting mat. Again, this is cutting mat from Mosaic Moments. This one has 1/8 inch grid lines. Some cutting mats come with 1/4 inch lines, but I recommend getting a cutting mat with 1/8 inch lines, because that way you have more options to trim and crop your photos. So I'm lining up carefully. I have the photo lined up with the thicker lines. I made sure my photo's lined up on the left side of the thicker line. If you were left-handed, it would be the opposite. And if you could look at the top of the photo, you can see I put it underneath the thick line. And the key is to be consistent. When you cut on the next lines, you are going to line up your ruler on the same side as the photo is, if that makes sense. But I'll show you. So I personally like to make my photos 3/8 of an inch less than the mat. So I don't have to worry about it on this side, actually, because the photo's 4 inches and that's already 3/8 less than the mat that comes in the page kit. So I don't need to worry about doing that side, but I do need to worry about cutting it the other way. And I'm lining up my mat just about where I want to crop my photo. If you don't get it perfectly, that's fine, but you're going to crop the photo down anyway. So I'm just carefully lining that up to make sure my subject will fit into the cropped space. And I'm turning the mat so that my photo is lined up again on the left side of that thick line. And I'm just moving my mat to make it easier for me to see it. And you want to make sure your mat is next to the photo. I only have it 1/8 inch line away, and that you can see on the bottom of the mat here, you can see the grid lines. You don't want to line up the mat right up in the edge of the grid, or else you cannot see the grid lines to line up with your ruler. Basically, what I'm going to do is just trim the photo down 3/8 less than the mat. So it'll be 4 by 4 inches. The photo will be 4 by 4 inches. The mat is 4 3/8 by 4 3/8. And I just like to take my ruler and line it up on the grid lines, and I just cut it at the bottom part of the mat, and then I just need to count 3 little lines on the opposite end. And of course, you want to take your time and figure out which lines you want to cut on, but just remember that. Just make it, you put the mat next to your photo and then crop it down 3/8 less than what the mat is. So you just count 3 of the tiny lines, and then you're going to cut it. To use an X-Acto knife, you want to grip it similarly to a pencil, and then make sure there's room next so your arm can move back smoothly. You don't want your arm hitting right into your body. You want to move your body a little bit over and then have your arm just swing back easily, and then put pressure on that knife to cut your photo all the way through. And some people are not comfortable with X-Acto knives, so there are rotary knives. You could use scissors if you want to, although it might not come out as straight as you would like. And some people also use paper trimmers to cut their photos. So you pick whatever is comfortable for you. And as you can see here, I have a perfectly matted photo. Now I'm going to show you a second one with a smaller piece here, so that way you can see how I cut both sides. I just want to mention real quick, so earlier I said I cut the photos 3/8 less than the paper mat, but the key is to be consistent. If you don't want to cut it that much, you may want to cut it 1/8 less, or 2/8 less, or even 4/8 less. And the key is to be consistent, so your mat is going to be even all the way around. I personally like the 3/8 because it doesn't seem like the photos crop too small, and you can still see a reasonable amount of the paper mat behind the photograph. So that's personally why I like that. But if your photos are a little bit bigger than mine, like the subject's a little bit too big, maybe you want to cut them around 1/8 of an inch or 2/8 of an inch. So it's really up to you and what photos you have. So again, I'm taking my ruler, lining up on the edge of the paper mat, and I'm just deciding on which lines I want to trim here. So I decided to do 1/8 on this side. As you can see, hopefully you can see, I took 1/8 off. So I need to take 2 little eighths off. So with the way my subject lined up, I did 1 on the bottom and 2 at the top. But you could do like my last piece where I do all 3/8 on one side. So again, you just want to take your time and carefully cut your photos so your subject's head doesn't get trimmed off by accident or something. Now I'm moving the mat to the bottom. I'm kind of lining up where my subject is to make sure she will fit inside that mat. Alrighty. Sorry, I'm trying to make sure you can see it in the camera. But I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to trim off 3/8. So each tiny line represents 1/8. And so basically you want to cut in those 3 little spaces. I'm grabbing another piece of paper just so I can see, hey, is that where I really want to line up and crop my photo along those particular lines? So now that I've decided, again, I decided to take 2/8 off on this side. I should say it's not 2/8 off the photo, but 2/8 from the mat size here. And then on the other side, I'm going to take 1 off. So it's really nice to be able to have that mat, because it's so much easier to figure out where to cut your photo versus looking at the measurement and figuring out the measurements, So hopefully this makes sense, to have the mat next to your photo, so that way it's easier to tell how much you need to crop your photograph. All right, so this one's done, and as you can see again, it is perfectly matted on this little 3x4 piece. 3x4 meaning it fits 3x4 squares on our grid paper. So this one's finished, and I'm gonna go ahead and work on another piece that's larger. All right, this time I'm gonna crop a bigger photo with these mats, and of course all four of these are the same, so once you figure out one of them, you can do the rest of them, right? So again, I'm going to glue down my photo. Again, I have my cardstock here just so I don't get glue from the cutting mat onto my photo because nobody wants glue on their photos. And I'm lining my photo on the thickest lines on the grid, so the photo's on the left side of that thick line and on the bottom of that top line. And I have my mat here, which again, my photo is 4 inches in length of height, and my mat fits 4 inches in height on the grid paper. So I really don't need to trim down the photo that way because it's already 3/8 less than the mat, so I just need to trim it the horizontal way. And I'm just using my ruler, my paper here to make sure I'm trimming on the lines or using the right lines to crop the photo where I want them to. So I decided to go ahead and crop the photo right along the same line as the edge of the mat below. So on the other side, I need to make sure I take off 3/8 from the mat size and not the photo size. So as you can see, I have 3 little lines above the edge of the mat here, and I'm cutting my photo. So now it'll fit perfectly inside the mat, and if you want to check to see if you need more glue. Usually you might need to add some more in the corners because you might have trimmed the corners off. And there you go. The photo fits perfectly on this mat. So I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of my photos, and I will be back in a moment. All right, I have all my photos cut, and they all look great. I love how they look on this page kit. Now you can see I have one space left because I just want to show you how easy it is. So if you have, at least in our kit, a space that fits 4x6 of the squares on the grid paper, that's going to be a mat large enough for a full 4x6 photo, so I don't need to crop the photo. But a lot of people have concerns because you have an awkward space. The mat's not going to be even all the way around. So I'm going to just show you what I do. I make sure the mat is even around the 2 sides, and in this case I'm going to leave it the same width on the top as well, so the 2 sides and the top are the same width, so there's a little bit of an extra gap below the photograph. But what I like to do with this space is add a little bit of journaling. It's good to have some kind of information, even if it's just the date. So I have my pen here. Again, I showed the pen in the other video as a tool you'll need. If you want, you can write down the information with a pencil first and then go over with the pen, but I'm pretty confident with using a pen at this point, so I went ahead and just wrote it on the bottom here. So that is a great way to add the date or a simple title to this page. And now the layout is done, and as you can see, all I did was use Paige Kit, which had the photo mats and the pattern paper I needed. Plus, I just used the simple tools to cut the photographs, and I also needed glue to glue everything down, and that was it. It's a pretty simple process, and you have a 2-page spread in no time. If you would like to purchase a page kit or more, go to our website, snapincrop.com, and see our page kit collection today. And if you haven't already, go check out our next video where I show you how to create a simple photo focus layout perfect for beginners just using the basic tools I showed in the previous video.